Joining us now, investigative reporter Sara and Fox News contributor, and Greg Jarrett. Well, this book is going to be, the definitive book to counter what should have been blatantly, clearly stated in the IG report, and that is the Russian hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. How are you, sir? Back in New York. Sara, good to see you here in Singapore. Let's start, Sara. You've been up since we got the initial, conclusions or summary part of this, and now reading the whole 567 pages of it. Give us your headlines from this.
Well, this is a massive report. It's going to take a while to go through all of the details, but I think one of the most important things to come out of the Horowitz report was the IG found that a number of FBI agents, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, had a willingness to damage the Trump presidency, and I think that is very understated. You know, we have been looking at these text messages back and forth. We've noted the bias that are in these text messages, but how far were these people willing to go? And the IG makes it very clear that there was a willingness to damage Trump, and that's very concerning.
Let me add a point to that, because we had all the earlier Strzok Page emails, and he's lonesome and he's horrible, despicable human being and everything else. And, of course, we had we need the insurance policy just in case. But I forgot what page this was, a page sent a text to Strzok on February 24, 2016, specifically saying not to bring too many FBI resources into any Hillary interview because she might be the next president, and she would remember, don't go in loaded for bear. And then Strzok and Comey write the exoneration in May, which the report deals with. And before they ever do the investigation, clearly a whitewash. And what they did is they covered for obvious crimes, which the fundamentals of this has not changed just because the IG report came out. That is, Hillary did all of those things. And now that we've got Page writing Strzok that Trump's never going to make it to the White House, is he? No, he won't. We'll stop it. Go ahead.
We'll stop it. I mean, think about those words. I was on the phone today with a number of former FBI agents, one recently retired, and what was so fascinating is that they said they've never in their life imagined in the 108 years of the existence of the FBI that the result, this day and age, the result of this would be that the director would make a decision that has never been done before in the FBI to end an investigation when it was not as pervy, and that people within the FBI connected to Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, James Baker, the former general counsel, that all of these people were working actively to conspire against an incoming president and a potential political candidate.
And pull this out of the hands of the agents. One interesting side note to this is a follow-up. If we can go to Greg Jarrett, we know in all of this is that they are now going to Congress, take this report, and they have at the ready now FBI agents. Let me be clear. The FBI agents, the rank and file, are going to be the heroes in this story, because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones that know the truth. They're the ones that are dying to tell their story, which they cannot tell until they are subpoenaed. Now, my sources, Sara's sources, Greg's sources, we all know that those guys are already lined up. We know they're following this report. Will be a follow-up here. And one other thing, Greg, I mean, it was interesting to see all the laws that you had identified in this document. That, to me, jumped off the page. And the second thing is the Strzok email shows the FBI covered up the fact that hostile actors, in fact, did gain access to Hillary's email, which was in the original draft that they took out, just like gross misconduct and extreme or gross negligence versus extreme misconduct. All of that we were dead right on from the get-go.
Yeah, and that was the most important part, I thought, as I read through the report today, that they did confirm that Comey initially found Clinton committed crimes. And then the language was redlined out. It was altered. And, the IG never really gets to the bottom of that. And then the other changes, which you just mentioned. Look, Comey comes out of this bruised, battered, and bloody. But, frankly, it's not surprising to me the IG was unable to connect the dots that he cleared Clinton for political reasons. It's what I predicted on your program last night. I mean, and here's why. And no one's going to leave an incriminating paper trail that says, let's fix the Clinton case to absolve her. Nobody's going to confess to it after the fact. That would be confessing to a crime. But the evidence is sufficient for Americans to draw the inexorable conclusion. Comey contorted the law. He twisted the facts. He ignored compelling evidence to clear Clinton, and nothing else makes sense. And you can really see that in the section to which you just referred, in which the IG really breaks down the statutes that were examined by Comey and others that Clinton surely violated, and yet they just sort of misconstrued and massaged them, and you can tell the IG thought so.
The Justice Department Inspector General did refer 5 FBI employees for an investigation into whether this politically charged hostile text messaging, et cetera, violated FBI code and some laws here. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I mean, it's not just Strzok and Page. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, it's not just Strzok and Page. It would have been impossible for it to be just Strzok and Page, although Strzok was in charge of both the Russia investigation. He was very, very well involved in the Hillary Clinton use of a private server to conduct government business. I think what I found most interesting tonight, because beyond the Inspector General report, we want to know what the FBI agents on the ground are thinking. We want to know how they feel about all of these revelations. And something came up today that was so important. They said unless the FBI cleans house, ensures an internal investigation into the FBI, that means Christopher Wray has to take it upon himself to make sure anybody who was connected with McCabe, who was connected to Peter Strzok, to Lisa Page, to all of these players, that they be either removed from the FBI or demoted or moved into another position, because the FBI cannot continue as is. And if they don't do that, it's going to be a major problem. It's going to be a problem for the FBI agents that are in there that are doing their job. And another thing, Sean, the House Intelligence Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the Oversight Committee, they need to subpoena FBI agents, bring them before Congress, have them tell the truth. They can't just go through the FBI and DOJ. Remember, this is CYA. They don't want this to be public. Imagine how embarrassed, Christopher Wray feels about this and others. Well, embarrassment's not good enough. They need to clean it out. They need to start it fresh, and they need to move forward. And the only way they can do that is by telling the truth.
One of the things that I think, your book is out in just a short time in July, Greg, and this is the heart of the book here. And it's real simple. The illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, it's called the Russian hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, and I forgot, what's the second part?
And frame Donald Trump.
And frame Donald Trump, because here's why. And I thought Trey Gowdy's summation of this was dead on. The treatment that they afforded Clinton and other subjects and other targets here was starkly different from the FBI's investigation into Trump campaign officials, where things were voluntary and consent was given. Even the July 2nd, the IG report goes into the July 2nd interview of Hillary Clinton, conducted by Peter Strzok, whose girlfriend is saying, go easy on her, she's going to be president, you don't want to piss her off. What was voluntary is replaced by search warrants, bullying tactics, subpoenas, compelling people to do all of these things. It's dramatic. It's like saying, I'm going to prosecute, a liberal this way and a conservative this way. It goes to the heart of whether we have equal justice under the law, application under the law, and due process for all. And the answer is no. And that's what should be glaring to everybody.
Oh, absolutely. Look, and let me give you an example, a little-known fact. There actually was a grand jury convened in the Hillary Clinton email case, but they never used it for testimony or presentation of evidence for a grand jury to consider. They only used it as a vehicle for a handful of subpoenas, and that was it. And that tells you it was a charade. What happened when Mueller launched his investigation? He immediately convenes a grand jury to present evidence, to obtain warrants, to engage in all kinds of investigative techniques that were never used in the Hillary Clinton case. So it does underscore the two standards, one for Hillary, in which he gets away with crimes, and another for Donald Trump, in which he falsely is accused of crimes.
Well, and also, Greg, I think what's really important here is the fact that what we've seen is the scope of the investigation. What's so fascinating to me is that the scope of the investigation under Mueller is so wide and so far-reaching, and we still don't even know it wholly because Rod Rosenstein, obviously that memo, we don't have access to it yet. But the scope of the investigation into Hillary Clinton, that was so narrow, and they weren't, the scope was so narrow, and they allowed witnesses in on the interview and gave them all kinds of exoneration. So for me, that is one of the most important points.
Well, this is very important because prosecutors, referred to the, categories of witnesses and, senior aides to Hillary Clinton, were allowed in the interview. And that would be unprecedented. And they didn't take their laptops. All things we had discussed in detail, and I'm sure is in detail in your book, Greg.
It is. I mean, I have talked to so many former federal prosecutors and indeed former top officials at the FBI who are aghast that Cheryl Mills and Samuelson, who were top aides to Hillary Clinton, who got immunity, then were allowed to sit in on the interview of Hillary Clinton. They're fact witnesses, and now they can conform their testimony to hers. I mean, this is just antithetical to justice, and it really emphasizes that this was rigged. It was fixed.
It was rigged and fixed, and everything we have been saying up to this point is all true. And, there's a real danger here if justice is not properly served, and all of this done under the circumstances of a presidential election. Just think about this. They're aiding one candidate. They're rigging an investigation into the guilty party, launching a full-fledged, full-throttle investigation into somebody over nothing. And this is what their conclusion is, because why? They had a chosen candidate. They had a candidate they thought was going to win and wanted to win. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. All right, as we continue, Sean Hannity Show. We're in Singapore. Glad you're with us. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. Sarah Carter still here with us. Greg Jarrett back in New York. His book, of course, The Russian Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump. I said before this report came out today, Greg, that it's going to be interesting because all the information you've put together, now you're comparing it, and I know you haven't read all 568 pages of this thing, but you've gone through as much as we possibly can. What have they missed compared to what you found?
Well, I think they've totally ignored that Hillary Clinton violated other statutes beyond the Espionage Act. They go through the Espionage Act and they, do a pretty good analysis of that, but they disregard.
How can you not say this was willful mishandling of documents?
Exactly. Under 18 U.S.C. 1924, they seem to totally ignore that. And that one is a very straightforward statute
that's the unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents by government employees.
Exactly. Not only that, but, false and misleading statements, destruction of evidence. These are things that they didn't really deal with that my book goes into great depth on. So it is I know it's 500 pages, but it's a rather shallow report in that regard.
Well, personally, for me, I think I understand why they ignored it. They also found in the IG report that multiple people within the FBI, including Comey, misused what was government documents and sent them through unsecured servers. And I'm sure if the IG was asked to do an investigation into how many FBI agents and how many senior-level FBI agents on the 7th floor were actually sending classified information on unsecured servers, I think they'd be quite shocked and surprised to find out how many are doing it.
Well, I think that's the point. It's irrefutable. It's the evidence incontrovertible. She committed these crimes. All right, we'll come back. We'll continue more with Sarah, Greg, and Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida joins us. We'll talk about Rod Rosenstein also in the next half hour. All right, 25 till the top of the hour, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program. Yeah, more than an insubordinate Comey. It's a corrupt, upper echelon of the FBI. And yeah, everything we know is true. Everything we said from the get-go is irrefutable. The evidence is overwhelming and incontrovertible. Hillary Clinton violated numerous laws. Now, did they come out and say it in the report? No, this was an investigation into the investigation of the Clinton email server scandal. But there is Hillary Clinton, look at the laws, 18 USC 793, willful mishandling of documents or information relating to national defense. Remember, even Comey said it. She had top secret, classified, special access programming information marked classified on her email server. That's a violation. That's a felony. Or the removal, loss, theft, abstraction, destruction of documents or information relating to national defense through gross negligence or failure to report such removal, loss, theft, that's Hillary too. Guilty. Fact, indisputable. Or 18 USC 1924, unauthorized removal, retention of classified documents, material by government employees. Guilty. Fact, indisputable. Or 18 USC 2071, concealment, removal, mutilation of government records. Yeah, all true. And then the obstruction aspect of all of this. Oh, subpoenaed emails? Just let me delete 33,000 of them. But it's about yoga, wedding, and a funeral, and I'm emailing my husband who doesn't have an email account. 33,000. Really? How many emails could you possibly send on one wedding, one funeral, and yoga? There's not 33,000. It's impossible. Even if you sent like 5 yoga tips a day in the emails, it's still not possible. And then, of course, we have more evidence of obstruction, which is when you acid wash your hard drive and you delete it with bleach pit, and then you have an aide bust up your hammers or your Blackberries with hammers, and then, of course, pull out the SIM cards of the one device you do hand over to the FBI. Why didn't the Inspector General just come out and clearly state it? He'll have to answer himself. But to me, this is a swamp document that is meant and designed to protect the swamp. In a second, Sarah's going to break some news about the FBI director. And when you think about everything we learned here, what did we learn? We learned that, yeah, hostile actors gained access to Hillary's emails. That means top secret classified special programming information. You know what that means? If you're an operative, sources and methods of the United States of America were compromised. Our highest level of classification was compromised by Hillary. And they put it in the original draft when Comey and Strzok were writing it back in May. And then, of course, they interview her in July. It's Peter Strzok, who's being warned by his lover. Now, be nice to her. Don't go too hard on her. Or else, she's probably going to be president. You don't want to piss her off. You're going to want access to her. Well, that all happened too. Hostile actors have access to it. That puts this country in jeopardy. You understand? The idea, this could have been written in 50 pages, blasted everybody out of the water, but that's not what the swamp does. The swamp protects the swamp. We do have 5 criminal referrals for investigation here, investigative probes that are a part of this report. We know that all FBI procedures were broken here. A full analysis of how there's a 2-tiered justice system, the way they go after Donald Trump with subpoenas and every single aspect of the law and the heavy hand of the law on him and his campaign. And I'm not even talking about FISA abuse right now. And then with Hillary, every needle is thread, every consideration given, the exoneration written before the formality of okay, we've got to interview you. Let's make it fast. Bring your friends in. We're not going to take their computers. We'll make them queen for a day, and they have total, complete freedom just to, get away from all of this. And the fact that they say there's no political bias here, but yet we got a smoking gun that says where Peter Strzok's lover, Lisa Page, is asking, there's no way he's going to become president, is he? It can't happen. And he writes back, she writes, Trump's never going to become president, right? And then he writes back, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Whose we'll? How could you ever suggest that's not political? All right, we continue. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett. Greg's new book is coming out. It deals with all of this, the Russian hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump. Also, Freedom Caucus member Matt Gaetz is with us. And I got to ask you, you sent a letter. You want the unredacted, any changes to this report that they now had 3 weeks in the lead up to this to suggest such to the Inspector General. And as part of oversight, you and 2 other congressmen are demanding the full report in its original form. I would assume now you'll probably get that by 2025 based on the Department of Justice and how they work.
Yeah, it's very funny, Sean, how the Department of Justice and some of their agents view the time-space continuum. Of course we want all the drafts, and of course all the things you said about Hillary are true and awful. But the bombshell in this Inspector General's report is Chapter 12 that goes to the very beginning of the Trump-Russia investigation, the political bias that the Inspector General essentially says was part of the origin of the hoax. Think about this, Sean. The quote you just read, where Peter Strzok is saying to Lisa Page that, we'll stop him. Trump won't be president. It was 8 days before that very text message that Peter Strzok himself ended up on Papadopoulos and started the, counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign. 8 days. So, this is a Department of Justice that cannot produce records to us in a year. But all of a sudden, Peter Strzok knew 8 days after he opened up on Papadopoulos that he could bring down Donald Trump. Here's why. On page 420 of the Inspector General's report, the Inspector General says that they cannot exclude political bias in the decision from Peter Strzok to end all focus on the Hillary Clinton investigation and to have everybody prioritize the Trump-Russia investigation. They cannot say that it wasn't political bias that led to that investigative decision. I think that is the bombshell that we'll carry today. And also there's this mysterious new character to the story, attorney number 2. This was the top FBI lawyer that went on to the Mueller probe, and he was texting other FBI officials, Viva la Resistance, literally associating himself with the resistance movement while he was working for Bob Mueller as the FBI's top lawyer.
What page is that on? What page, do you know what page that particular exchange is on? I found an exchange on page 512 that I found were fascinating, and it was in August of 2016, Agent 1, Agent 5 exchanging the following instant messages as part of a discussion about their jobs, and Agent 1 goes, "I find anyone who enjoys this job an absolute blanking idiot. And if you don't think so, ask them one more question. Who are you voting for? I guarantee it will be Donald Trump." And I forgot about Trump, says Agent 5. That's so sad and pathetic if they want to vote for him. Agent 5 goes on, someone who can't answer a question, someone who can't be professional for even a second. And then in September, same agents, 1 and 5, exchanged an email. I'm trying to think of would I rather, instead of spending time with these people, Agent 1, stick your tongue in a fan. Agent 5, I'd rather have brunch with Trump. Ha, says Agent 1. French toast with Trump. I would rather have brunch with Trump than a bunch of supporters like the ones from Ohio, and this is their word, not mine, that are, quote, retarded.
Incredible, because that's how they actually feel about Trump voters. And that's not just how those senior FBI agents felt. I mean, we know Comey felt the same way based on his description of Trump himself. But this is how the Clinton campaign felt about Trump voters, and that's why they paid such little attention. But I think right now what Congressman Gaetz is saying is absolutely essential, that the beginning of this investigation, let's just go back to what the House Intelligence Committee wants, Sean, House Oversight Committee, what everybody's been looking for. What was the beginning of this investigation?
Well, there's more evidence of politics at page 416. I mean, I never really liked the Republic anyway. Pence is stupid. That's not political? The whole idea that, Lisa Page is writing "Be nice" to Hillary when you do the interview. Don't go loaded for bear is the term she used, Greg Jarrett. That's not political?
Yeah, look, the key line is where the IG says This is not only indicative of a biased state of mind, but implies a willingness to take official action to impact the presidential candidate's electoral prospects. That's a direct quote. So, clearly they harbored a bias. Could the IG come up with an admission or a piece of paper that said, we did it, we carried out our bias by launching the Trump investigation and clearing Clinton? No, they didn't. I mean, that's pretty rare in any case. But the facts and how they dealt with Trump and Clinton on very different playing fields demonstrate that is what happened.
Let me go back to Congressman Gates. Congressman, we now know, too, that they'd covered up the fact that hostile actors gained access to Hillary Clinton's email. Now, that means sources, that means individuals, that means lives and methods are exposed. And if I had to guess, that's why everybody was like, well, where did the Clinton emails come from before? Well, they came from her originally, and I'm sure Russia, they're probably one, China's probably another, North Korea, Iran. Those would be the first hostile actors I would think of that had access to her top secret classified special access programming emails, and that rendered sources, individuals, human beings, human intelligence. Didn't that put them in their lives at risk? And when you go back to the whole Valerie claim that she's a covert agent, which she never was, and the left's reaction to that, and you compare it to this, and the fact that they just want to gloss over that, to me, is unspeakable. Because on top of it all, it's all illegal. These are all crimes, what she did.
They are, Sean, and the very outrage you just is shared by so many former FBI agents. Throughout the Inspector General's report, they detail circumstances where Comey and McCabe had all of these current and former agents outraged. Comey was getting inundated with emails from people out in the field saying, hey, if I'd have done this, if I would have subjected Americans and their safety to this risk, I would have been thrown out of the FBI and probably prosecuted. And so to try to manage public relations, Comey was meeting with the Society of Former FBI Agents who were furious that this had gone on and who expressed their extreme displeasure with the way James Comey allowed a lack of accountability to persist throughout this agency. Here's the question, Sean. Where do we go from here? Is this just going to be another report that lays on a dusty bookshelf in Washington, D.C., or will the Attorney General, upon seeing these facts, realize that Hillary Clinton
I've given up on
never put in jeopardy?
But let me ask this all-important question, because isn't it true that Congress has lined up FBI agents that were pushed aside? In other words, the people that we respect the most, that they were pushed aside. This was put in a special category where only the upper echelon of the FBI was involved in this investigation. And aren't they, in the end, going to be the heroes here? In other words, the FBI agents that know what they did here was wrong, and they saw it, and they knew it, and they can't say anything about it unless they're subpoenaed, aren't they lined up ready to go and tell their story?
Let's hope so, Sean, because it was Andrew McCabe, who's now been referred for criminal prosecution, who sent that infamous email, saying that this was going to be taken away. He later testified that it was a headquarters special. We need to know why the D.C. field office was deprived of jurisdiction to handle this matter, and I think it was because politics had infected the upper levels of our justice system and our FBI, and you know what? It goes on today. We have not truly drained this swamp because we've got this illegitimate Russia investigation built on a rotten foundation, and we see how rotten it is each and every day.
Sarah?
Absolutely. If this would have been another country, and Congressman Gates, I think you can understand where I'm going with this, but if this would have been another country and we were writing a story about this, what would we write about? We would be saying that their intelligence apparatus, their law enforcement apparatus was trying to take out a duly elected president based on these text messages, based on the evidence that we have at hand.
No, the title of Greg's book nails it. The Russian hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary, who's guilty, and frame Donald Trump. That's it. It captures the whole thing. By the way, you can get early orders at Amazon.com, Hannity.com, and it will be in bookstores everywhere in July. Quick break. We'll come back.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
Don't step on Scott Shannon, new rule in radio. Anyway, glad you're with us. Write down our toll-free number. It's 800-941-SEAN. We expect the FBI Director Wray is giving comments at the bottom of this half hour. It's 6 after the hour a.m. in Singapore and, 6 after the hour Eastern Time, p.m. in New York, D.C. The IG report is out. 5 FBI employees referred for an investigation. I would expect and anticipate that there are going to be criminal referrals based on the report. In many ways disappointing. In many ways, I would say this is a report of the swamp to the swamp. Linda had a pretty good line. He's calling the IG Horowitz, he's Switzerland. He wants to be viewed as everybody. But what are we discovering here? Yeah, that Strzok and Page are talking directly about, Lisa Page asking Peter Strzok, he's never going to become president, speaking of Donald Trump, right? Right? The lawyer asking Strzok. Strzok writes back, remember, he's at the heart of this investigation. He's the lead guy. He's the one writing the exoneration months before he interviewed Hillary July 2nd, and then the big exoneration of Hillary Clinton takes place thereafter. And then, of course, he writes back, no, he won't be president. We'll stop it. Same people texting, well, we have the insurance policy, right? Then we learned also that, in fact, there were hostile actors that got a hold of Hillary Clinton's emails on her server in the mom-and-pop shop bathroom closet. The whole idea that Hillary is not indicted in all this. Now, there's a lot of people saying that she may very well now have and be facing serious legal jeopardy and problems. We'll see over time. But after Strzok vowed to stop Trump in the text exchange with Lisa Page, it was only a couple of weeks after, July 31st, that they launched the Russiagate investigation. And as they pointed out in the report, and as Trey Gowdy and others now are pointing out, the system of investigation, the methods of investigation, when you compare them, and this is the heart of all of this, do we have equal justice under the law? Do we have equal application of our laws? Tell that to Christian Saucier today, who went to jail for a year, 6 photos, and you go through the different legal standards and all the laws, and they even mention a lot of them, not all of them, in this report. But what happened to him? Why didn't it happen to Hillary? Why is that even possible? How is it? Do we have equal justice under the law? Are people treated fairly under the law? Or if you're somebody like Hillary Clinton and you're likely to be president in the minds of these people that are doing the investigation, you don't want to piss her off. Now, don't go in too strong-armed here against her. Lisa Page telling Peter Strzok. Now there's a question. Rachel Stockman has a piece out on... I was on lawandcrime.com. FBI agent Strzok just threw a major legal bone to Paul Manafort and all the other Mueller targets. And I think this is some good insight into this. As, quote, she writes, they're probably jumping for joy at the IG report, which examined Clinton's probe specifically, raising concerns that the political bias may have impacted investigative decisions based upon the text messages of Page and Strzok, and the investigators seem particularly concerned with the ones that we have just mentioned to you. And anyway, she goes on to say that in some ways that they were both involved in the Russia investigation and assigned to the probe conducted by Special Counsel Mueller. Remember, Strzok was on Mueller's team, his merry band of Democratic donors. And anyway, the Special Counsel, before they removed them, and Strzok was assigned to lead the Russia investigation in late July of 2016. And as agents were zeroing in at that time on Paul Manafort and other former Trump affiliates like General Michael Flynn. Now Manafort's facing charges related to all of this. Anyway, if the OIG report reads that the suggestion in Russian-related text messages that Strzok might be willing to take official action to impact the president's electoral prospect cause us to question the earlier mid-year investigation report in which Strzok was involved and whether he took specific actions in the mid-year, meaning the Clinton email server investigation, based on his political views. And when it came to the Clinton investigation, they were unable to find evidence this political bias led to the improper decision-making. However, it's important to note no conclusion was given as to whether these messages could have impacted the direction and decisions as it relates to the Russian probe. I'm sorry, this reeks of all political bias. And the handling, if you're comparing and contrasting the way they have, viciously gone after Donald Trump and subpoenas and knocking down doors at 6 a.m. and guns drawn compared to what they did in the Hillary Clinton case, where she's given every consideration that nobody else in this country would have gotten. That's a big part of this. Anyway, Congressman Ron DeSantis joins us as we continue with Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett. Greg's book is coming out perfectly timed for next month, The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. Let's bring you in, Ron DeSantis, also a gubernatorial candidate in Florida. Your general thoughts, reactions, and feelings.
Well, one of the things that I think we take away from this report is there's really no more basis for this Robert Mueller investigation on two different fronts. There was never really a strong or even a case for obstruction for firing Comey, but I think this report makes clear Comey should have been fired. It was absolutely justified, and it would be a horrible witness in an obstruction case. So that just needs to be bed. That needs to end. And then obviously with the Peter Strzok, that damning text message where he's saying, we'll stop him from winning the election 6 days after he launches a so-called collusion investigation based off some idiotic statement that Papadopoulos supposedly made drunk at a bar, some 25-year-old kid. This whole thing was tainted from the start by the bias of people like Peter Strzok. So on both prongs, Trump-Russia collusion, no case. Obstruction, no case. Mueller needs to close up shop.
I see a tweet from Mark Meadows, and he points out a specific section on page 420 and 421, which is remarkable, and it calls the Strzok page text not only indicative of a biased state of mind, but even more seriously implies a willingness to take official action to impact the presidential candidate's electoral prospects. Isn't that go to jail stuff, Congressman?
Look, just before we even get there, why the heck does Peter Strzok still have a job? This guy needs to be fired. Are you kidding me?
That's a good question. And didn't we hear recently he still had access to top secret information, classified information?
He never had his security clearance suspended, or at least they've never told us that when we've asked. And yes, look, I think there's criminal liability, a lot of criminal liability here. Hillary, for example, the whole idea that they weren't going to charge her was because, she didn't intend to harm. There was no harm. We don't know if there was harm. Well, the OIG, they point out, they know that foreign actors obtained access to some of her emails. That should have been a basis to go forward initially. Strzok was the one who scrubbed that from Comey's statement. So he manipulated this process time and time again, and I think it really is a major abuse of power that was fueled by this absolute hatred for Donald Trump.
Agreed. Greg, let's get your legal aspect of this. And, where are we going with this? What happens here besides, the usual whitewash? We don't follow up, like Operation Fast and Furious, Benghazi. Everybody's so disheartened that we never get the guilty parties and we never finish the job.
Well, I think that Strzok may be fired by the end of today. I'm looking forward to FBI Director Wray's public statements at the bottom of the hour.
Who are these 5 people that are being looked at now by the FBI? Do we know? Because it didn't say.
Yeah, no. We know Strzok is one of them because he's actually identified. As to the others, I don't have their names, but. What's interesting is that it's very unclear what kind of a referral that is. I take it to be for disciplinary action, and Strzok is certainly one of them. But a lot of these individuals have already left. Ribicki, McCabe, Comey, Page. I mean, they're all gone. Strzok's like the only guy left. But there are others that will receive disciplinary reviews. And Strzok is gone. I can't believe he hasn't emptied his desk and been shown the door and turned in his badge, and that may happen by the end of today or by the end of this week.
Sarah?
Well, I also think that Strzok has been there because that gave the Inspector General the ability to question him, the ability to interview him. I mean, if he had left the FBI or resigned, I see him as a potential cooperating witness as well as somebody who is going to be a target. We know that FBI Director Christopher Wray, I've been told by my sources, has already spoken to the employees internally by video conference. He did say to all members, this is before he's coming out publicly now, he said, we're holding employees accountable for any potential misconduct. We've already referred the conducted highlight in the IG report to OPR and the FBI's independent Office of Professional Responsibility. And we need to hold ourselves accountable for the work we do and the choices we make. We know that they are going to take this IG report as seriously as possible, and particularly with the 5 agents that are going to be recommended for disciplinary action, and also know that Director Wray has already spoken with the head of all FBI field offices throughout the world and is going to hold a meeting with them to review what's happening right now within the Bureau and oversee possible significant changes in the future.
And let me ask you, Congressman DeSantis, I mean, from my understanding is there's going to be a lot of FBI rank and file that are brought in and asked now more specific questions because they can't tell their side of the story unless they're subpoenaed. And then I hear they're lined up, banging at the door, begging for a subpoena because they want to expose the truth in all of this.
Well, I hope so, and I'd love to be able to hear from them. But, some of our guys, Sean, as you know, got to get more aggressive on this. We need the answers now. You can't just bring in one person 6 weeks from now, then another one 2 months. I mean, we need to do this and keep the momentum going. We also have to get the answers to why wasn't that Strzok text message given to Congress? It wasn't even redacted. When they gave us the text messages from August 6th, 2016, you have the entire text string with just that text missing. And so was that just a coincidence? I find that hard to believe. I think somebody removed that when it was being produced. Who was the one that did that? What did Rosenstein know? When did he know it? And we got to hold people accountable for that, because that, I think, has been the most egregious example of a long list of examples of them obstructing Congress.
Yeah, I mean, some of the conversations, I got to tell you, that I'm reading about that they have in here, very disturbing between, one FBI employee. I mean, I never really liked the Republic anyway. Employee 2, I mean, I never really liked the Republic anyway. Number 3, as I have initiated the destruction of the Republic, would you be so kind as to have coffee with us this afternoon? I'm clinging to small pockets of happiness in the dark time of the Republic's destruction. And then you have another example. This is the day after the election, the presidential election, November 9, 2016. FBI attorney 2 and another FBI employee not involved in the Clinton email server investigation exchanging the following messages. I am numb. I can't stop crying. That makes me even more sad. Like, what happened? You promised me this wouldn't happen. You promised. Okay, that might have been a lie. I'm very upset. Ha ha. I'm so stressed about what I could have done differently. Don't stress. None of that mattered. The FBI employee, the FBI's quote-unquote influence. I don't know. We broke momentum. FBI employee, that is not so. All these people who were initially voting for her would not and were not swayed by any decision that the FBI put out. Trump supporters are all poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy POSs that think that he will magically grant them jobs for doing nothing. And they probably didn't watch the debates. They aren't fully educated on his policies and are stupidly wrapped up in his unmerited enthusiasm. The other FBI attorney, I'm just devastated. I can't wait until I can leave today and just shut off the world for the next 4 days. Why are you devastated? I'm watching TV for 4 years. I'm not watching TV for 4 years. I just can't imagine the systematic disassembly of the progress we've made over the last 8 years. ACA, Obamacare, gone. Who knows if the rhetoric about deporting people, walls, and all that other crap is true. I honestly feel like there's going to be a lot more gun issues, too. The crazies won finally. This is the Tea Party on steroids, and the GOP is going to be lost. They'll have to deal with this guy for 4 years. We have to fight this again, and Pence is stupid. Yes, that's all true. And it's just hard not to feel the FBI caused some of this. It was razor thin in some states. Yes, very thin. Plus, my GD named is all over the blankety-blank documents investigating his staff. But I absolutely do not believe the FBI had any part. So who knows? That breaks to him. What is he going to do? And then they said, I'd say that we're discussing your personal feelings, the outcome of the election between friends. When asked about the FBI employee, meant, so they're covering their tracks, too. Unbelievable.
These are armed federal employees.
Federal employees, that's correct.
And armed.
That aren't supposed to be political.
Well, this should never happen in the United States. This is the power that the intelligence community and law enforcement wields.
I got a break. We'll come back. We're in Singapore. Quick break, right back, continue.